Alright, so today we're going to learn how to do and solve multi-step inequalities. That's what this video is about. So remember, don't call me after midnight is our steps to solve, right? Don't distribute, right? Call, combine like terms. Me, move variable to one side. After, add or subtract, multiply, or midnight, multiply or divide. And then finally, our last step, the only difference between inequalities and equations is that we have to graph inequalities at the end. All right, we're going to graph it on number line. All right, so let's do some steps here, and let's figure out what we have to do to solve this inequality. All right, so my first step, don't distribute. If I have parentheses, get rid of them using distributive property. So that means I take this number on the outside of my parentheses and I times it by the numbers on the inside the parentheses. So 2 times x would be 2x. 2 times negative 5 would be negative 10. And then I can bring everything else down because then I'm done with all my parentheses. All my parentheses will be gone then. Right? So my next step, call. Call means combine like terms on each side of the equal sign. Well, we don't have the equal sign here, but this will be an inequality sign, I should say. So remember, I draw my wall, and I look on the left side of my wall. Can I combine anything on my left side? Well, I can combine this 2x, and I can combine this x. 2x plus x will give me 3x. And then I can bring down that minus 10. Then I look on my right side. Can I combine any of this stuff? Well, I can combine this 2, and I can combine this 4. 2 plus 4 is 6. And it's a positive 6, so I put plus 6. And then I can bring this 5x down. And that's my combining like terms. So then I can go on to my next step, move variable to one side. So I'm still going to have my line here, my wall, and I'm going to move one of my variables over, so all my variables are on one side. So we want to do the opposite operation. So if I want to move this 5x over to the left, I have to do the opposite. This is a positive 5x, so the opposite of that would be a negative 5x. To get rid of it on this side and leave me with 6. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So 3x minus 5x will give me negative 2x. And then I can just bring down that minus 10. I can only subtract that 5x from the x because these are the like terms. I can't combine it with that 10 because that 10 doesn't have an x. So that leaves me with negative 2x minus 10 is less than 6. Alright, so now it's a two-step equation. So now I'm going to add or subtract. So I still have my wall here, and I'm going to add or subtract. So when I get rid of that minus 10, so to get rid of that minus 10, I have to do the opposite, and the opposite of that is plus 10. So I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. 6 plus 10 is 16. And on this side, I still have this negative 2x. And now it's just a one-step equation, and I'll be done. Midnight, multiply or divide. Get rid of the coefficient by either multiplying or dividing. So, I see I have negative 2x. Well, I know that means multiply. So the opposite of multiplying by something is dividing by something. So I'm going to divide by negative 2 to get rid of that and leave me with x. And I have to do the same thing on the other side. 16 divided by negative 2 is negative 8. So remember, inequalities is a special rule. Whenever we multiply or divide by a negative, I have to flip that inequality sign. So the inequality sign was less than. I have to flip it to make it the opposite, which would be greater than. So this would be x is greater than negative 8. So that means I can graph that now. I'm going to put negative 8 on my number line. I'm going to put one number that's bigger than negative 8 and one number that's smaller than negative 8, and I can go ahead and graph. So there's no equal sign underneath of this, so that means it's going to be an open circle on negative 8, and it's greater than, so that means I'm going to put my arrow pointing towards the bigger numbers. And then that's my final answer. x is greater than negative 8. And that's what it looks like on a number line. All right, let's try another example. So this example, my first step, D, distribute. So I'm going to distribute, get rid of those parentheses. So I'm going to take that 2 and multiply it by the things on the inside. 2 times 3x will give me 6x, and 2 times negative 6 will give me negative 12. And I'm done on parentheses, so I can bring everything else down. And I'm done with don't or distribute. My next step is combine like terms. So I build my wall, and I'm going to combine everything on the left side and combine everything on the right side. So what can I combine on my left side here? Well, I see I can combine that 6x and that negative 8x, because they both have an x, so I can combine them. And 6x minus 8x will give me negative 2x. And I can't combine that negative 12 with anything, so I just bring it down. And on my right side, it's just a negative 10, so I can just bring that down. There's nothing to combine it with over here. So I'm done with combining my like terms. Don't call me, move variables to one side. Well, my variable's already on one side. There's no variable on my right, so I'm done with that step. I can cross that one off. After A, add or subtract. So I want to work on the side with my variable and get rid of that number that doesn't have the variable. So this has a minus 12, so the opposite of that would be plus 12. Negative 10 plus 12 will give me 2. And on my left side, I would have negative 2x. I'm done with that step. So finally, my last step is multiply or divide. So I see I have negative 2x. That means multiply. So I have to do the opposite of that, which would be divide. So I divide by negative 2 to leave me with x on this side, because these negative 2's cancel out. And then 2 divided by negative 2 will give me negative 1. So remember, there's a special rule. We got to change our, whenever we divide by a negative, we have to flip our inequality sign. So my inequality sign, if I look up here, it was greater than. So that means I have to flip it to less than. So this would be x is less than negative 1. So on my number line, I'm going to put negative 1 and then put some numbers that are bigger. And then put some numbers that are smaller. And then I'm going to put a circle on negative 1. There's no line underneath, so that means I'm going to leave it as an open circle. And it's less than, so my arrow is going to point to the left to show that it can be any number that's less than negative 1. All right, my next example, I have this big, long inequality, right? I can still solve this just by following my steps. Don't call me after midnight. So first step, don't, is distribute. I have to get rid of the parentheses. So I see the parentheses, I have a negative parentheses. What does that really mean? What that really means is there's a little negative 1 there. It's a little sneaky 1. They don't usually write it. But really what this means is negative 1 times this parentheses. So I have to take that negative 1 and distribute it to the two things inside the parentheses. So negative 1 times x would give me negative x. And then negative 1 times negative 20 will give me a positive 20. And then I can bring everything else down because that's the only parentheses I have in my equation. And then I want to draw my line, my wall, to separate my two sides, and I'm done with my distributive property. My next step is I combine like terms, my C. So I look on the left side of my equation, what can I combine over here? Well, I see I have a 7x and I have a negative 3x. They both have x's, so I can combine them. 7x minus 3x will give me 4x. And then I can bring down that plus 5. On my right side, can I combine anything? Well, I see I have a 20 and I have a 5. Those are just numbers, right? So I can combine those. 20 plus 5 will give me 25. And it's positive, so it's plus 25. And I can bring down that negative x. And I'm done with combining my like terms. My next step, move variable over to the side, one side. I have to move one of my variables over. So I like to move all of my variables over to the left. So what I'm going to do is move this negative x and move it over to my left side. So to do that, I have to do the opposite. So the opposite of a negative x is a positive x. So I have to do the same thing to the other side. 4x plus 1x will give me 5x. And then I can bring everything else down. On my right side, I just have 25 left because these x's cancel out. And I'm done with moving my variables to one side. Now it's a two-step equation, a two-step inequality, I mean. So I want to work on the side with my variable, and I want to either add or subtract. So I want to get rid of this plus 5. So the opposite of that would be minus 5. And I have to do the same thing to the other side to keep it balanced. Well, if I do that, what leaves me, those 5's cancel out, and that leaves me with 5x on the left side. And 25 minus 5 gives me 20 on the right side. And I'm done with my adding or subtracting. So now my final step is multiply or divide. So I see I have 5x, and that means multiply. So the opposite of that would be divide. So I want to divide by 5. If I divide each side by 5, 5x divided by 5 will give me x. 20 divided by 5 will give me 4. And I divided it by a positive, so my sign stays the same as it was. So this will be x is greater than or equal to 4. So now I can plot it on my number line. So I'm going to put 4, put some numbers that are bigger and some numbers that are smaller, put a circle above 4. I see it's greater than or equal to. Whenever it's equal to, I fill in my circle, and it's greater than, so that means I'm going to draw my arrow to the right, so it points to the numbers that are bigger than that. And that's my solution to this big, long inequality. All right, let's do one more example. So don't call me after midnight. All right, first step, distribute. I take that number on the outside of the parentheses to get rid of it and multiply it by the things inside the parentheses. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times negative n is negative 5n. And then that's my only parentheses, so I can bring everything else down. I put a plus in front of the 15 because it was a positive 15. And I'm done with my distributing. I build my wall. That's my big blue line here I drew. And now I can combine my like terms. So I look on the left side. Can I combine anything? Yeah, I can combine both of those because those are just numbers, right? 12 plus 9 will give me 21. Now I look on the right side. What can I combine? Well, I can combine 2n and negative 5n because they both have an n. 2 minus 5 will give me negative 3, and they both have an n, so I write negative 3n. That plus 15 I can't combine with anything because there's no other just numbers on the right side. So now I'm done with combining my like terms. My next step is move the variables to one side. Well, if I look, my variables are already on one side. This has an n on this side, there's no n on this side. So I'm already done with that step. So now I want to get that n by itself. So I want to get rid of this plus 15 to get that n by itself. So the opposite of plus 15 is minus 15. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. And I do minus 15 to cancel it out on that side. 21 minus 15 on this side gives me 6. And on my right side, I'm left with negative 3n. And I'm done with my adding or subtracting. My last step is I multiply or divide. So this is negative 3 times n. So the opposite of that would be divide by negative 3. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. 6 divided by negative 3 would be negative 2. Negative 3n divided by negative 3 will leave me n because the negative 3's cancel out. Alright, so remember back to our rule. I divided it by a negative, so that means I have to flip my inequality sign. So if you look up here, you see it's less than sign, right? So I have to flip it and make it a greater than sign. Alright, so I have negative 2 is greater than n. Alright, I want to rewrite it so the n is on the left. So I'm going to look at my sign. You see how the point of the sign is towards the n? So when I rewrite that, I'm going to make sure the point of that sign is still towards the n, and then I can put the negative 2 on the other side. So I have n is less than negative 2. So on my number line, I can put negative 2, put some numbers that are bigger and some numbers that are smaller. Then I'm going to put a circle on negative 2 because that's my answer. There's no equal to sign underneath, so it's going to be an open circle, and it's less than, so that means I'm going to draw my arrow to the left. And that's my answer to this long inequality. Alright, pause the video and try this one on the right on your own. Unpause it when you're done and see if you got the right answer. Alright, for this answer, you should have got x is less than or equal to negative 3/5 or negative 0.6. And on our number line, you put that on the number line, it would be a filled-in circle because it has an equal to sign, and it would be pointing to the left. Alright, so that's how we solve multi-step inequalities. If you have a question, please feel free to email me or ask me during class. Have a great day.